Hadestown is without a doubt an absolutely revolutionary musical. In the many forms that it's taken over the last 2 decades, it has always been a story that has deeply resonated with people, no matter the time. It seems that Hadestown is only becoming more and more relevant. A story of love and hope in the face of cruel inequality, corporate exploitation, and an ever-growing climate crisis, which we are all forced to contend with as time moves on. Hadestown examines the human reactions to these hard times and offers us a path through it, if only we choose to believe that change is possible. Hadestown is my personal favourite musical. I had listened to the cast recording countless times, examining every detail of the music, the lyrics, and the characters before I finally decided that I needed to see it for myself. So I went down to the Lyric Theatre and left that night a changed person. The show had even more depth than I could have imagined in my many hours listening through the music. The staging absolutely blew me away, with Hades and Persephone's constant presence throughout the first 20 or so minutes of the show being something that I couldn't have expected. Persephone's space on the stage during Why We Build the Wall stood out to me as well. And the cast were just absolutely phenomenal. Desmonda Cathabel as Eurydice and Victoria Hamilton Barrett as Persephone were absolutely fantastic, but Dylan Wood's If It's True in particular stood out to me and deeply spoke to me. If It's True was already one of my favourite songs in any musical, but Dylan Wood's performance of it was truly something else. It's an experience that I haven't really stopped thinking about since I saw it. The key theme that stood out to me in that show, and that has genuinely changed my way of thinking, was that of revolutionary optimism. As is said in the show, Orpheus had a gift to give. He can make you see how the world could be in spite of the way that it is. And this is absolutely true of the show itself. I couldn't deny the presence of that hope which Orpheus represents while I sat in the Lyric Theatre completely mesmerised. There are many ways that people will react to hardship, especially on a larger systemic scale. When faced with systemic inequality, a declining climate, and brutal injustice that define both our world and that of Hadestown, it is hard to maintain hope that anything could ever change. While being screamed at from all sides that nothing changes and that's just how it is hard to see that for the lie that it is. Each of the characters in Hadestown represents different ways that people react in response to these hard times. Perhaps the most common response of those who are not directly affected by systemic injustice is apathy. In a world where we are able to and do see the extent of the world's cruelty every day, it is hard not to become numb to the issue, to distract ourselves and shut it out entirely, believing that there is nothing that we could do anyway. Persephone acts as the representation of this approach. She is trapped in the cycle which is partially responsible for the suffering of others, kept there by Hades. She is forced to leave Hadestown late and return early, depriving the people of spring and autumn, leaving them only with blistering heat and freezing cold. This is reflective of the position that all of us in the West exist in with relation to the climate crisis. These companies that hold us all hostage and control our behaviours, represented in the show by Hades, force us to uphold and worsen this crisis through petrol cars and single-use plastic, which we can't very well easily opt out of. There is the saying, there is no ethical consumption under capitalism. Persephone reflects his position of being stuck upholding a cycle of violence and suffering, as there isn't much of an alternative if you wish to continue living in the world that you are living in. Persephone's, like many in real life, response to this is just to stop looking, to stop seeing the world how it is. As Orpheus says, Lady Persephone is blinded by a river of wine. She chooses to ignore the hardships in favour of material pleasure, represented through substance addiction, and the small flashes of joy that she can find in these moments. She enjoys the summertime and living it up on top, and ignores the fact that spring never happened. She tells the gathering, let's not talk about hard times, pour the wine, it's summertime. She has given up on hope of breaking the cycle, so just decides to enjoy what good she can find within it, taking it to an extreme and unhealthy extent, and stifling change. Orpheus recognises that this focus on pleasure, in hopes of ignoring the issue, is part of why things aren't the way they should be, citing it as one of the reasons why the gods have forgotten the song of their love. The drive for individual survival, represented by Eurydice, is similar to the apathy of Persephone, but in those without the luxury of ignoring the struggles. Eurydice spends any way the wind blows, writing off the world as irreparably cruel, and people as unfailingly selfish and self-centered, stating, people turn on you just like the wind, everybody is a fair weather friend. This reflects the human nature argument thrown at any sort of leftist ideology to try and turn the working class against each other. She believes that this is how people are and always will be, so she looks out for herself first and foremost. Eurydice has not been awarded the safety and comfort that Persephone has. She'd seen how the world was, so her belief that nothing changes manifests itself in obtaining survival instead of pleasure. She is initially extremely skeptical of Orpheus's unrelenting hope, represented through his song, but allows herself to see Orpheus's hope of how the world could be when presented with real evidence that this could work. Through the carnation, she further allows herself to believe that the world could be better when presented with good times during the summer in Persephone's presence. Eurydice is a strict realist. She had seen how the world was and won't easily neglect that for unfounded hope of a better future. However, during the summer, while times are good, she allows herself to be happy to take off her coat and, in spite of herself, this young girl decided to stay. This is already a change from when she first met Orpheus, as she allows herself to fall in love with him, in spite of herself again, and take on his hope. However, while recognizing this, she doesn't let go of the belief of how the world is. When Persephone is dragged back to Hadestown, Eurydice sees the warmth and security that Hades offers year-round and is instantly tempted, saying, "Kinda makes you wonder how it feels." The second she sees things taking a negative turn, she's drawn towards the safety of Hades despite Orpheus's attempts to intervene. As times turn dark again, Eurydice puts her coat back on and returns to accepting that, till someone brings the world back into tune, this is how it is. Eurydice tries to balance her belief in the song with the truth of their material needs, while Orpheus single-mindedly tries to finish the song, neglecting the world in front of him, leading to Eurydice's death. Eurydice puts the responsibility on someone else to bring the world back into tune, not accepting that she could have a part in that herself, and only accepting that she needs to survive in the meantime. The better world for Eurydice leaves her to freeze and starve, leaving her vulnerable to Hades, who offers everything that Orpheus isn't. In her final moments, Eurydice calls out to Orpheus, hoping for another way, but in the end, she has no real choice but to do what she must to survive, abandoning all hope of what the world could be, and her life along with it. Hades is the key figure responsible for the hard times in the world of Hadestown. He allows his insecurity to spread out and cause suffering for everyone else. He enforces inequality to ensure he stays on top, enforces poverty to ensure he stays rich, and enforces harsh winters to ensure he stays warm. He responds to hard times by making sure it isn't him that they're affecting. He is representative of the us versus them mentality weaponized by the rich and powerful to keep people subservient and always working for their benefit. This outlook doesn't allow for one to see the humanity in others or feel it in ourselves. So he builds up a paradise in which no life is allowed in order to eternally provide work for him. He uses lies about freedom and the enemy, which we see so often in today's political climate, to ensure the walls stay strong. He makes sure that no one talks to each other, because the second they do, they will see the lies and try to take away his power, which he only feels more attached to as it grows. Hades mirrors the way Orpheus neglects Eurydice in an attempt to make things better in his treatment of Persephone. He controls her to ensure he stays while neglecting her as a real person in favour of maintaining his power. His dedication to keeping the world the way it is and preventing change is likewise acknowledged by Orpheus as a key reason why the true human nature of kindness and community cannot flourish to benefit everyone, as King Hades is deafened by a river of stone, drowning out the song of his love for Persephone, his humanity, and the hope of a better future. Orpheus stands against all of these perspectives as an eternally hopeful, if somewhat naive figure. The show opens with him firmly believing in the way the world could be, and with him dedicated to make it so. He represents revolutionary optimism and inspires the same in Eurydice, which never truly leaves her, despite her choices towards the end of Act 1. However, Orpheus is by no means the perfect hero of the story. His blind faith in the song and the hope of how things could be causes him to ignore the way that things are, and neglects Eurydice when she needed him most. For any change to occur, we must recognise how things are now. We need to survive if we are going to create the better future that we all hope for. Orpheus doesn't do this, and it results in the death of Eurydice, which his unrelenting optimism causes him to follow her to try and make things better. Change only comes about when Orpheus begins to accept that the world is unjust and cruel, that he must face the way it is without accepting that nothing changes. The recognition of the hardships of the world, without accepting the so-called truth that that is how it is and always will be, allows him to rally the workers of Hadestown, making them question the truth that they had been told. He sings his own song, free from the melody of the gods, a song of the people, telling them to look at each other and talk to each other and help each other to achieve a greater good for all. If It's True is a rallying cry against apathy and simply accepting the way things are, and against the individualism that Eurydice represented at the start, and such inspires Persephone to call to the humanity lost within Hades. Orpheus is able to bring back the ancient song of hope and reawaken the love between these gods, allowing for connection and a path to a better future once again. Orpheus's decision at the end of the story is spoken about by many people as one of love, which is of course partially true. I've seen many people recently saying that an Orpheus who doesn't turn around is an Orpheus who would never go to save Eurydice. However, I don't believe that this is the most important factor in this decision. A recurring theme of this show is doubt, the loss of hope, and this is what takes over Orpheus in the moment and causes him to make this decision, as indicated by the song title, Doubt Comes In. Orpheus had mirrored Hades in many ways throughout the show. From the beginning of their relationship, Orpheus and Eurydice mirrored Hades and Persephone, with the language Orpheus uses in Epic 3 mirroring that of All I've Ever Known. Orpheus neglects Eurydice to work on his song, to work single-mindedly on what he believes will make things better for them, while neglecting the present situation. He must then allow Hades' interpretation of the world into his mind and into his thoughts to question it if it's true. He must see more than ever the hardships of the world to fight against them, and when put in the same position as Hades, alone, he ends up allowing doubt to take over, making the same decision that Hades does every year. Orpheus gives in to the doubt that shall ever come, which plagues Hades every year and which causes him to keep Persephone in Hadestown at the expense of the rest of the world. He also succumbs to the doubt in the power he sang about in If It's True. He allows himself to believe the lie that nothing changes, questioning, who am I against him? Orpheus's belief in a better world has been declining throughout the show, while Eurydice's was growing all the way up until Promises, where Eurydice has to encourage Orpheus to take her home despite his doubts. When left without Eurydice to reassure him, he sings his melody and no one responds. He is left only with the strength of his own hope and belief, but he cannot believe that Eurydice and all the workers who also believe in him are there right behind him. And so, as the music of all the people who inspired by his song swells, Orpheus turns around and kills all hope of anything working out. This is not the end. Despite failure, night after night, despite being almost certain from the very start how it will end, they reset the scene and begin to sing it again. Because here's the thing, to know how it ends and still begin to sing it again, as though it might turn out this time, I learned that from a friend of mine. The show returns to the start, returns to the point where Orpheus and Eurydice meet, a time where there is still hope, where Orpheus still believes and Eurydice still has a future. We maintain hope that it could work out, that it will work out eventually, that we can speak up and make things better, that we can not give in to apathy or doubt, and that spring could return once more. This is an absolutely phenomenal show, which will inspire hope in anyone who takes the time to think about it, and it left me utterly speechless that night as the cast sang Road to Hell Reprise. And while everyone is still digesting that, applauding the fantastic cast, there is one more song, sang by Persephone, We Raise Our Cups. This final farewell shows gratitude for all the Orpheuses that came before, everyone who tried and failed, everyone who paved the way for where we are. It is a recognition that while we may not be the ones who get to see success, we are part of the greater movement of humanity and we exist for a possible future, in spite of how futile it may seem. It recognises all these failed attempts as a source of hope and of inspiration to keep trying. We must continue to believe and we mustn't give in to doubt. Things can change and they can be better. Good night, brothers. Good night.